Something absolutely dreadful happened to Shakespeare's plays between 1623 and the school editions we were given in our day. They were turned from read out loud, develop your voice kind of material into shh, silent reading, please. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Fred Fox. I'm a retired librarian. For the past 25 years I've done a deep dive into Shakespeare's biography. I've learned a few things along the way that have put me at odds with my teachers, and these are the things I want to share with you via these programs. We are celebrating this year, 2023, the 400th anniversary of the first publication of Shakespeare's first folio, which appeared in 1623. Now, I want to tell you today about a terrible tragedy that befell that book. Readers of the first folio will know that Shakespeare's plays are very well punctuated there. There is a profusion of commas and colons and semicolons, periods. There's exclamation marks, question marks, rounded brackets, an unusual use of spacing, italics, the use of capitals. While it's notable by its profusion, there is so much of it. It's obvious that someone went to a great deal of work to do all of this, but by the time our modern day editors came to create those modern day editions for our modern day schoolrooms, I'm afraid none of this punctuation any longer made any sense. I've heard it described as the work of primitives, nonsensical, naive. The abuse just goes on and on and on. So what is a right upstanding modern editor to do but rip it all out from page 1 to 900, all of it torn away, stripped out, thrown out, and replaced with progressive, grammatical, easy to understand modern punctuation. These modern day scholars might have thought about what they were doing a little longer before doing it, because I'm afraid a terrible injustice was committed. If it wasn't grammatical punctuation, and how could it be grammatical punctuation? This came out in 1623. English grammar lay hundreds of years in the future. It just wasn't, it didn't make sense. This is what happens when, I don't know what they call that, what? Cognitive dissonance? Is that the word? Cognitive dissonance, where you can't see the past for the present. And that's exactly what happened here. If it wasn't grammatical, though, what was it? Well, very simply put, it was musical. These weren't grammatical punctuation marks, of course. How could they be? Grammar lay well into the future. As you can see here, these represent pause marks of various lengths. Now, a comma would be somewhat like a quarter rest in music, except perhaps shorter. You would come up to this comma, take a little pause, and then continue reading. Now, the colon is the same, except here you have a half pause or a half breath. And semicolon would represent sort of as in music, the dotted half rest. It's a three-quarter rest. So you can take a bit of a breather Well, not a breather. I mean, you can take a breath, a short breath, and then there's the period where you can take the full breath. When this kind of punctuation, as it was intended, is reinstituted, some quite marvelous things happen. Now, first of all, I suspect that some of you may well ask, well, how does he know this? And I will admit that it took me 8 years of thinking about this, because I too suffered from that cognitive dissonance. I had it bad for 8 years. I couldn't see through it. And then one day it just suddenly dawned on me, of course, how could I have been so stupid? But 2 years after that, I found corroboration in a French language manual published in 1591. And in the manual, I must explain that they only described there the comma, colon, and period. And that makes perfect sense, because when you look at printed play editions in this time period, or at least in the period leading up to 1623, you usually find everything but the semicolon, indicating that that three-quarter pause is something that was put into Shakespeare's text, but is not to be found very much elsewhere. So let's just consider for a moment what happens when we put this punctuation back. And I want to just read the opening lines from The Tempest, which is the first play presented in the first folio. I want to just point out that the men are out in a windstorm, and they're literally fighting against the wind. And so there's a lot of half-breathing, gasping for air and shouting, so that as it's written here in the Tempest, here in the first folio, it would sound something like this. Boatswain, here, master, what cheer? Good, speak to the mariners, fall to it yarely, or we run ourselves aground. Bestir, bestir. Hey, my hearts, cheerly, cheerly, my hearts. Yare, take in the topsail, tend to the master's whistle, blow till thy burst thy wind if room enough. And you see there all those colons, all those. It's wonderful. The punctuation actually moves the whole dramatic purpose of the poetry along. Now, what happens when we strip all that punctuation away? Everything is turned, I'm afraid, into a declarative sentence. Boatswain, here, master. What cheer? Good, speak to the mariners. Fall to it yarely, or we run ourselves aground. Bestir, bestir. Hey, my hearts, cheerly, cheerly. My hearts, yare. Take in the topsail. Tend to the master's whistle. Blow till thy burst thy wind, if room enough. You see, it's been flattened. It's been eviscerated. Everything is turned into declarative sentences, most appropriate to grammar, silent reading, the kind of reading that you would be expected to do in the classroom. It does nothing for developing voices. Well, just for students to be able to say this out loud with comfort. I truly believe that if all this punctuation was put back, we would hear better Shakespeare. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe, teachers of Shakespeare know their material, can certainly intellectualize Shakespeare all you want. But when it comes to saying Shakespeare out loud, the ones I had were not very good at it. All the sonic signposts, the sonic architecture has been stripped out and thrown away and replaced with this grammatical punctuation that maybe helps you understand Shakespeare a little better, but does not help you say it out loud. My big recommendation is that all this punctuation be put back as an aid to our classrooms, but also as an aid to our performance spaces. So often when I see Shakespeare performed, the actors are rushing the lines, and next time we're going to get into why these plays are so long. But anyway, this rushing is not very good for the audience, who is already struggling to understand what is really very dense and complex poetry. And so, I think audiences would appreciate all those breath marks in order to pump some air into the performance space, give actors some time to think, and give the audience, those moments to think. Shakespeare, after all, is poetry. Poetry is a form of music, and music has to be performed. It's not notes on the page, it's the sounds in the air. Next time, I want to look at the plays as a body and perform a couple of tests on them. One, why is the vocabulary so big? And two, why are the plays so long? So I hope you come back for that. See you then next time. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.